Good afternoon and welcome to Coffee on the Coast. I'm so happy to see you today. I'm your host this afternoon, Tina Prigge of Vagabond Creative Studio. So happy to be joined again by Therese Horsketter of the award-winning Manitowoc Public Library for a little bit of book banter. Therese, welcome back. How's it going today?
Thanks. It's been a good day. Had a little time to read already. And, that always makes your day.
What are you currently reading?
I am currently reading, I just started a J.D. Robb book, which is something that is, it's like the 45th in a series. And if most people are familiar with Nora Roberts, but J.D. Robb is also a name that she uses. And this series of books is set in like 2050 and beyond. And it has flying cars and a lot of different things, but it's really not sci-fi. It's, you really identify with the people, and it has strong characters, and I've stuck with it through all of these. You see them develop, but you could also read one as a standalone, just that you get more of the feel as you read more of them for what it would be like. And so that's what I just started reading. I'm not too far into it, and it's one of my favorites, of course, the favorite author. So I must say I'm expecting a good one.
Nice. Oh, what a treat. What a treat. And I have to say, after our conversation last time, Therese, there was a book that you recommended that we talked about. It was called The Husband's Secret. I read it right after, and it was even better than I expected based on our conversation. I was super excited about it because it sounded good, but it was even better. So thank you for that great recommendation.
Oh, that's always good to hear. Yeah, that's a favorite that I put out on the staff picks. So you'll probably see it out there sometime again.
Nice. Well, viewers, if you're ready for this, the first book that we're going to talk about today, Therese said also is rocketing up into her top favorites. Now, you said this is like a 600-page book. We're going to talk about We Begin at the End.
Right. We Begin at the End I did read the large print version. It was about 570 pages long, and it was well worth the read. It had the main character is a 13-year-old girl. Her name is Duchess Day Radley. She is a daughter of a single mom, and she has a younger brother, Robin, who is 5 years old. She is pretty much the caretaker for the family. And she has no idea who her father was, and her mother has never given this information to anyone. It's a smaller town, and it's a small California coastal town that they live in. And her mother is still friends with the basically the sheriff in town. And the backstory with her mother is that her sister was killed by a man who was a good friend of theirs also. This whole group that went to school together, he ended up going to prison for 30 years because of the death of her sister. And at the start of the book, he's being released from prison. So now it's to see what will happen with these people functioning together again in the same town. And the fact that they were good friends before, but he really did not want people to visit him in prison. And the crime was not intentional, but he still did a lot of time for it. And
Ooh.
so Duchess is a very tough girl and a loner pretty much at school also, and goes through a lot. And one warning with the book for anyone who does not like language as part of your reading, Duchess is pretty much every page has language on it. It's
I
just
think the book describes her as a self-proclaimed outlaw, right? So she's speaking like an outlaw.
herself. And so anyway, she has one schoolmate that befriends her almost against her wishes. And at some point, she meets her mother's father, her grandfather, and ends up living with him um, for a certain amount of time. And then there's another lady, Dolly, who seems not quite, but almost like a grown-up duchess, that she is just, I'm doing what I want. I'm my kind of person. It's not that the language is there so much, but the attitude is there. And so these are different people brought into her life finally at that point. And the way I would have to say it is that it's the first time that someone takes care of her for a while and in her life to that point. And so there are some other characters, the local butcher, somebody else who lives in the neighborhood, and they dislike each other. And there are so a few little twists and turns in the book, of course. And it is some of the funniest moments I've read, some of the most heartfelt. My husband was sitting in the living room with me, and I just busted out laughing out loud and had to read him several parts of it. And then later I was crying. So it is a very, very emotional book. It's, and like I said, well worth the read. It is not a lot of flowery writing, not a lot of, for people who do not like, a full page description of where somebody is living, that kind of thing. It is, for saying 570 pages, it is pretty much short and sweet, and gives you the story pretty concisely yet.
Nice. Okay, I've got a question. So the character that you said that is being released from prison after 30 years, is
Right.
that a danger element? Like, are they afraid that he's going to be coming back into society? Is he like vengeful or holding a grudge? Is that part of the story, or am I just way off
I
base?
There is a part of it that I'm sure almost would feel like that, but it is more that, um, well, and they do say the sheriff, whose nickname is Walk, his name is Walker, um, was friends with Vincent, the man who went to prison. And part of his testimony is what helped put him in prison, even though they were good friends. So there is the feeling of, and he refused to say him in prison. This, it's not really taking away. The book kind of gives you the blurb that he's been there and suffering his time through in prison. But I think it's not so much a danger feeling as how are we going to survive together after this big 30-year gap? Where
Mm.
is everybody going to be? And it was an accidental death, so it's not that he feels like a danger to the community or his friends.
Okay, neat. I also read a blurb that kind of described the book as uh, a view into two types of families: the families we're born into and the families that we create.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good way to say it too. Yes.
Nice.
It's
Cool. Well, I'm very excited to put that one on my read list.
yeah.
So then, Therese, there's a book that I'm also super excited to read based on the synopsis, and also the fact that Stephen King calls it insanely readable. Now, this is one that you have not read yet. I have not read yet, but it is, and it's a newer book. It's called The Plot, a novel by Jean Corlitz. Tell us about this. What's intriguing you about this book?
Well, the basic idea is that there's a man named Jacob. He wrote one book, which was well accepted, but after that, nothing else went anywhere for him. So he is currently teaching, and the way it describes it, his most arrogant student named Evan shares a book he's working on, telling him that he doesn't need any help. He's got this excellent plot, this that's going to be an amazing book. So he's kind of jealous, and he does, of course, see what this book is since the student shares it with him eventually. But um, he waits for the book to come out and expects the student to end up famous, and the student dies. And the book is never released. So here he has the book now, and he decides to have it published under his name. And after a couple of years of notoriety, celebration, being this well known, much loved author for this amazing book, he gets an email stating, "You are a thief." And it says in here, and I'm just going by the blurb, of course, because I haven't seen it, but it says trying to figure out who his antagonist is, along with trying to hide the truth from his publishers and from readers. It says he discovers some secrets about the original author that amaze and terrify him. So that's a whole big, seeing. It says, who is Evan, the one who originally wrote it, and where did he get this plot?
Oh my gosh. So it's plot twist on plot twist on plot twist.
So there's quite a few questions there, and it does sound like it should be a good book.
So yeah, I'm just going to put that up one more time. This book is called The Plot. Very cool.
Yeah.
Is this one available at the library already?
This is available to put holds on, yes. Or it's available, it's circulating. So yes.
Okay, very cool. And viewers, if you've happened to have read that book already, definitely let us know in the comments. Is it as good as we're thinking it is? Does it even exceed our expectations? Is Stephen King right? Is it insanely readable? I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, it looks good.
Cool. Well, let's diverge a little bit. We've got two other books. These are an interesting kind of mashup, and I think I'll have you explain the books first, and then we can explain why. And I think, did I read a little quote that The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett by Annie Lyons is about complex humanity?
She, and sorry, I missed the end of what you said, Tina.
Oh, I think I read a little blurb somewhere that described this book as talking about complex humanity.
Yes. It's Eudora is 85 years old, and as she just wants to say it, she is ready to be done with her life on her terms. She signed up with a clinic in Switzerland to be gone before Christmas that year. And she is ecstatic. She just feels like, I know how old I'm feeling. I'm, the things that are not working right for me anymore. And she had a rough childhood, and taking care of her mother and sister when her father died rather, in World War II. She has been pretty much alone for her life, and she has a cat. She allows herself very little activities, walking and swimming. And other than that, she has a very staid outlook on how she functions and how she expects people to function. And so she is just really ready for this event to take place. And then, chance has it, she meets a gentleman named Stanley from the neighborhood. And then also, new family moves in with a 10-year-old daughter named Rose. And they are, I'm not sure if they're next door neighbors but they live close. So Eudora really resists change and is still on her planned course, which nobody else is aware of course. This is just her own decision. And it says her life changes, but only as much as she is going to allow yet. So there are, it seems emotional books here, but this one definitely has its, ups and downs emotionally. And it's not that it is a magic switch either, with her all of a sudden saying, oh no, don't have to do this. Or, so she still has to live her life. But
Wow.
these are nice additions to it, even if she resists. They are still nice additions to her life.
So meeting this 10-year-old girl, meeting Stanley, her life is kind of reinvigorated with an energy and a purpose that she hasn't had. So she's kind of got to reevaluate the complexities of what she's planned for herself and what her outlook
Right.
has been.
Right.
Wow.
And they're just, it's when we talked about the other book with Duchess, The Outlaw, where she resists everything, and Rose is the opposite. and she is the living life, and I am getting people there, and I'm doing, she just for a 10-year-old just gets in there and takes over. And so, yeah, this is,
And
yeah,
what's the
it,
tone of the book? Is it in general, like when you get to the end, is it uplifting? Is it, a downer?
we'll just kind of leave that up to you to decide once you read it.
Oh.
Yeah.
and we should say too, viewers, just because Therese loves a book or just because I love a book and you hear a recommendation, definitely check it out. But it doesn't mean that every book is for every person. Something might
Right,
resonate with you in a different way than it resonates with me or than it resonates with Therese.
right. And what we were discussing a little bit, that it's taken me sometimes to try a book 2 or 3 times even. If something keeps coming back around and tells me you should really read this book, even though I didn't get into it the first time or even the second, you might pick it up on another time and really like it. And we've said too, I have, there's certain staff that we share books with a lot, saying you should read this. And there are times people will come back and say, I couldn't get into it. But then others love it. So, it just, your mindset, or sometimes what you just finished reading. If you read a really good mystery and you want another mystery, it's hard to get into a different type of book sometimes.
That's true. That is so very true. Yeah, sometimes you just need a little like break or like a palate cleanser or something to like shift into the next one. Although sometimes I can put one down and pick up the next one and keep going. And it's like I
Right.
feel like I'm on a tear to like just get through all these great books, these stories. But then sometimes the danger, does this ever happen to you, Therese, that the plot lines kind of cross in your mind?
Oh, yeah. And one time, of all the things, I was reading 2 books, because sometimes I'll have one here at work and be reading on my lunch break, and then have one at home, or maybe a couple started at home. And the 2 books I was reading both had 2 main characters with the same names. So that really got a little bit, yeah, that got a little bit, not necessarily confusing, but more like annoying when you're trying to keep track of them. But
That's
yeah,
funny. That's too funny. So, okay, that the book we had just talked about was The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett. So then let's talk a little bit about The Wife's Tale. And the reason I thought that they were kind of similar is because, like you described, Eudora Honeysett was like set in her ways and had just a very specific outlook on life. And when I
right.
read the jacket of The Wife's Tale, it sounded kind of similar. Not that they're similar people in any way, but that she also had a very kind of narrow life experience that then changes in the book. But let's
Mhm.
hear it in your words.
It is. It is just that kind of book. I tend to recommend it, especially in spring and summer for some reason, because I think of that as, like new and getting out there kind of times, more so than in winter. But um, Mary and Jimmy Gooch are married and in the 25th year of their marriage. And she is up waiting for him to come home on their anniversary, and he never shows up. And he doesn't come home in the morning, he's still not there. And as it turns out, um, Mary has had issues with herself, and then with weight that she has put on over the years. That she weighs roughly 300 pounds now and never wants to leave the house. And her husband will try and get her out to do things with him. He has to travel for work sometimes, and he'll say, "Why don't you come with me and we can make a weekend of it?" That kind of thing. So he has still encouraged her. He is still there for her, but um, it just comes down to where he says, I need to be away and decide where his life is going. But also, he happened to win nice money in a lottery, and he put $25,000 in the bank for her and said, "You use it however you feel you want to." And he's not telling her where he is going to be. So at this point, a woman who has probably hardly set foot out of work or out of home except to go to work, which is a part-time job in a pharmacy, um, has now she's now having to set out and try and find her husband. And her best thought, I believe, is that she is traveling. I read this a couple of years ago, but she travels to, um, say, where other relatives live, different things like that, hoping to find him because he's not communicating. This was 10 years ago, and I'm thinking there should have been cell phones, but I don't really recall if that was any part of it, people trying to find each other that way. But um, she has to make a journey. And in this journey, she has to force herself to do a lot of things she never did before, things her husband wanted her to do. And now she's doing them to try and find him. So it is a person who really kind of reinvents herself and has to have the oomph to almost force other people to help her along the way. She has some very interesting characters that she meets along the way that help her either by choice or because she's on the spot and is pretty much begging for help with things. So to keep making her way through this adventure. And
Interesting.
yeah,
I'm really glad that you explained that because after I had read the jacket, I thought that perhaps the husband had unexpectedly died or something had happened. But this sounds like it was purposeful and, in a way, almost like an anniversary present, right? Like a way to get her to shift out of what she was stuck in and re experience herself through these adventures.
right. So she sets goals along the way. And I know where it said she hardly set foot doing anything, but one part that I remember in the book is when she arrives in a warmer climate and all she has is like boots that fit her feet and heavy clothes, and she gets to the point of wearing things till they're almost falling off and having to buy things, but then realizing she's had to walk a lot now, and so she's changing a bit. So that is a part of it, as well as just her having to get out there and function with other people more. So
It sounds like a really good read. It sounds really inspiring.
yeah, I look at it as a positive book. Um, no matter what we find happens with Mary and Jimmy, um, there is a point that they are together again. And um, yeah, I just have to say, I think it's a positive book. It's a struggle of a book to some point, but overall, I think positive.
Not a struggle to read, though, right? It's a struggle happening in the book.
Right, right, definitely. I think it's a pretty good read. It I just looked at it the other day, and it starts out a little uniquely as you're reading the first couple of pages, but then it's going to go into its story. So, yeah.
Nice. Excellent. Thanks for those great recommendations. Well, you've got one more. What comes after? And the big question
Okay.
is what comes after this? What comes after this show? What comes after this book is always what I want to know. But this is actually a book called What Comes
Yes,
After by Joanne Tompkins.
right. This was a debut novel by her, and the blurb listed as two teen boys go into the woods. One does not come out. The second one is dead within a short time.
Oh,
And then a girl appears that no one knows, and they don't really know where she came from. And she manages to make her way into the lives of the families of these two boys. And um, there are a lot of, well, you learn fairly quickly what happened to the boys without me saying anything. And um, you get to learn parts. Her name is Evangeline, and she is 16. The boys were, I think, just a bit older than she was. And she makes her way to the home of the boy who died in the woods and ends up living with his father, and that he takes her in, and he has no idea what her backstory is with the boys or not. She is not even really forthcoming as to knowing the boys or not. But and then the second boy, the one who dies shortly after, his um, his family lives next door basically. So and the boys were good friends. So she just becomes a part of both families and helping them function together in a way. And but then with her own backstory yet too,
Does it
which
give too much away if I ask, did she know that that was the boy's father or the boy's families?
she knew the first one, the one that she went to, she knew that was
Okay.
his. And so she purposely headed there. And yeah, it's a hard one to explain without giving much away about it. But yeah, that's when I read it, just the blurb about two boys and then this girl appears after they're both gone. So yeah, it's I think all of these have been, I think just about all of them that we talked about today, except for the plot with the author, um, were all very strong family drama and hopefully family, a positive feel to all of them to some extent.
They
And
all sound like they have kind of a serious
yeah,
emotional punch to
right,
them.
right. They all do. I think every one of them has that to a certain point. Yeah.
Wow, these are great recommendations. I'm just going to put this picture up again because it shows all of the books that we talked about in today's book banter. Again, The Wife's Tale, The Plot, The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett, What Comes After, and We Begin at the End. I am super excited to dig into each one of these books. And Therese, we'll have to catch up once we've each read The Plot to see if it met our
Yeah.
expectations or exceeded our expectations.
Yeah. I'm really looking, I hope it doesn't disappoint after all I've seen good advertised about it. And it does
Right?
sound like a good story. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a disappointing read, especially when you're excited about it or when it starts off strong and then it just like disappoints you in the end. Ah.
Yep.
And viewers, if you've read any of these books or are planning to, let us know in the chat and or let us know what you're reading and what recommendations you have. We'd love to hear it. Therese, thanks so much for joining me again today for Book Banter. I am already looking forward to next month, and we will see you then. Until then, everyone, keep turning those pages. Take care.